A paralyzed millionaire laughs in the face of a hungry stranger's offer. But when she walks away, he realizes, too late, she wasn't just begging. She was offering him the one thing money couldn't buy. The millionaire's laugh. The sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, painting Gregory Vaughn's penthouse balcony in streaks of gold and shadow. He sat motionless in his wheelchair, a half-empty glass of 18-year-old Macallan dangling from his fingers. The ice had long since melted, diluting the whiskey into something weak, just like the doctor said his legs would always be. Paralyzed from the waist down after the accident, the word still tasted bitter, even after 5 years. Below him, the city pulsed with life. People rushing home, laughing, stumbling, living. He used to be one of them. Now he just watched. A rustling sound came from the side of the balcony. Gregory didn't turn his head. Probably a pigeon scavenging, or the wind tossing around the remnants of last night's takeout. Then a voice. Trade your leftovers for a cure. Gregory's grip tightened around his glass. Slowly he turned. A young woman stood just outside the reach of the balcony's light, her hoodie frayed at the edges, her sneakers worn thin. In her hands, she held a takeout container. His takeout container, the one he'd tossed into the trash earlier that evening. The remnants of a $200 Wagyu steak sat inside, cold and forgotten. Gregory exhaled through his nose, unimpressed. Another beggar with another sob story. "Kid," he said, swirling his drink, "if I believed in miracles, I wouldn't need a wheelchair." The girl, Lucy, though he didn't know her name yet, didn't flinch. Her dark eyes locked onto his, unwavering. "Your doctors ever tell you why the experimental treatments failed?" she asked, her voice steady. "Bet they didn't test for heavy metals." Gregory's glass froze halfway to his lips. A beat of silence. Then a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "What? Are you some kind of street corner psychic?" he sneered. "Or just hoping I'll throw cash at you to go away?" Lucy didn't rise to the taunt. Instead, she flipped open the takeout container, picked at the cold steak with her fingers, and took a bite. She chewed slowly, watching him. "I don't want your money," she said finally. "I want your leftovers. And in exchange, I'll give you what your money can't buy." Gregory's jaw tightened. He should call security. Have her tossed out. But something, maybe the whiskey, maybe the way she held herself like she wasn't afraid of him, made him pause. "You expect me to believe some homeless girl has a cure for spinal injuries?" he asked, voice dripping with skepticism. Lucy wiped her hands on her jeans. "I wasn't always homeless. And you weren't always paralyzed." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, stained at the edges. "Your medical records say your injury was from the car crash, but your blood work tells a different story." Gregory's pulse spiked. How the hell does she know about my blood work? Before he could demand answers, Lucy turned to leave. "Wait!" he barked. She glanced back. "What's your name?" A small, tired smile tugged at her lips. "Lucy. And you're Gregory Vaughn. Former CEO of Vaughn Biotech. Current recluse. Future, well," she shrugged, "that depends on whether you're smart enough to take the deal." Gregory stared at her, his mind racing. This had to be a scam. A con. And yet, "Heavy metals?" he repeated, testing the words. Lucy nodded. "Your body's full of them. And I know why." A cold knot formed in Gregory's stomach. She took another step toward the door. "Wait!" he called again, louder this time. But Lucy didn't stop. She just tossed the takeout container onto a nearby table and said, over her shoulder, "Think about it. I'll be back tomorrow. Same time. Bring more steak." And then she was gone. Gregory sat there, the hum of the city below fading into white noise. His fingers tapped against the armrest of his wheelchair, restless. He should forget her. Should dismiss the whole thing as nonsense. But what if it wasn't? What if, after all this time, the answer had been right in front of him, and all it cost was a plate of leftovers? The hidden file. Gregory Vaughn didn't sleep that night. He sat in his home office, the blue glow of his laptop casting sharp shadows across his face. The penthouse was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan of the elevator down the hall. He had dismissed his night staff hours ago, insisting he needed no assistance. Heavy metals. Lucy had said. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up old medical reports, blood work panels, anything that might hint at what she meant. The doctors had called it a traumatic spinal injury. Clean, irreversible. No one had ever mentioned toxins. No one had even suggested it. And yet, he paused, staring at a 3-year-old lab result. There, buried in the fine print, elevated levels of cadmium and mercury. At the time, his physician had brushed it off. Probably from some old dental fillings, the man had said, "Nothing to worry about." Gregory exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. His eyes flicked to the takeout container Lucy had left behind, still sitting on the edge of his desk. The steak was gone, but the grease remained smeared across the cardboard like a stain. Who was she? He reached for his phone and dialed his assistant, Marcus, not caring that it was 3:17 a.m. Marcus answered on the second ring, voice groggy but alert. "Mr. Vaughn?" "I need you to find someone," Gregory said. "A woman, late 20s. Goes by Lucy. No last name. She was here tonight on the balcony." A pause. "Sir, was she trespassing? Should I call security?" "No," Gregory snapped. Then quieter, "Just find out who she is, where she came from, everything." Another pause. Marcus knew better than to question him. "I'll start now." By dawn, Marcus was standing in Gregory's office, a manila folder in hand. His tie was perfectly knotted, but the shadows under his eyes betrayed the hours he'd spent digging. "You're not going to like this," he said, placing the folder on the desk. Gregory opened it. Inside was a grainy surveillance photo of Lucy Martinez, taken outside a public library. Then a second photo, Lucy in a lab coat, standing beside a row of microscopes. Gregory's pulse quickened. She's a scientist? Marcus corrected. She worked at BioNext Therapeutics until 2 years ago. Lead researcher on a project studying heavy metal detoxification. The lab was shut down after an investigation into, he hesitated, into Vaughn Biotech's waste disposal practices. Gregory's fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. "What investigation?" Marcus swallowed. "The one you told legal to bury. The one about the groundwater contamination in Harlow Springs." A cold weight settled in Gregory's chest. Harlow Springs, a nowhere town near an old Vaughn Biotech manufacturing plant. He barely remembered the case, just another nuisance lawsuit, settled quietly. But if Lucy had been involved, why would she come to me? He muttered, more to himself than to Marcus. Then he saw it. At the bottom of the folder was a photocopied page from a notebook, scribbled equations, chemical formulas, and in the margin, circled in red ink, his own name, Gregory Vaughn. Next to it, 2 words, "Dose confirmed." Gregory stood abruptly, his wheelchair rolling back with the force of the motion. His legs didn't respond, but his mind was racing. Was this revenge? Had Lucy poisoned him? No, that didn't make sense. If she wanted him dead, she wouldn't have offered a cure, unless the offer itself was a trap. Where is she now? He demanded. Marcus checked his phone. Last known address was a shelter in Queens, but she hasn't been there in weeks. She's off-grid. Cash transactions, no phone trail. Gregory's jaw clenched. He didn't like loose ends. And Lucy Martinez was quickly becoming one. Find her, he ordered, before she comes back. Marcus nodded and turned to leave, but Gregory stopped him with a raised hand. And Marcus? Yes, sir. No one else hears about this. Not security, not the board. No one. That evening, Gregory sat on the balcony again, a fresh glass of whiskey untouched beside him. The city lights flickered below, indifferent to his turmoil. He had spent the day rereading every report, every email about Harlow Springs. The facts were damning. Vaughn Biotech had cut corners. The groundwater had been contaminated, and people had gotten sick. But him? Had he been poisoned? A knock at the balcony door made him tense. Lucy stood there, hands in her pockets, just like the night before. This time, she was holding a small glass vial filled with something amber-colored. You looked me up, she said, stepping forward. It wasn't a question. Gregory didn't bother denying it. You knew about Harlow Springs. I did. And you think I was poisoned? Lucy tilted her head. I don't think. I know. She placed a vial on the table between them. This is the antidote. 1 dose. Test it yourself if you don't believe me. Gregory stared at it. Why help me? After what my company did. For the first time, Lucy's calm facade cracked. Something raw flashed in her eyes. Grief, fury, a wound still unhealed. Because I'm not like you, she said softly. I don't let people die when I can save them. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Gregory alone with the vial, his guilt, and a choice that could change everything. The bitter truth. The vial sat on Gregory's desk for 3 days. He didn't touch it, didn't throw it away, just watched it, as if expected to move on its own. The amber liquid inside seemed to glow under the dim light of his study, taunting him. On the 4th morning, he called Dr. Eli Sanderson, the only physician he still trusted. Eli arrived within the hour, his sharp eyes narrowing the moment he saw the vial. He didn't ask where Gregory had gotten it. He didn't need to. You want me to test it, he said, picking up the small glass container and holding it to the light. Discreetly, Gregory replied. Eli nodded, slipping the vial into his coat pocket. And if it's what you think it is? Gregory's fingers tightened around the arms of his wheelchair. Then we'll talk. The waiting was torture. Gregory tried to distract himself. Meetings, emails, the mind-numbing paperwork of a man who had too much money and too little to do. But his thoughts kept circling back to Lucy. Who was she, really? Not just a scientist. Not just a victim of On Biotech's negligence. There was something else, something she wasn't telling him. Marcus had dug deeper, uncovering fragments of her past. A younger sister, dead at 16 from kidney failure. A mother who'd spent her last days in a hospital bed, riddled with tumors. Both had lived in Harlow Springs. Both had drunk the water. And Lucy? She'd been the one to connect the dots. Gregory's phone buzzed. A text from Eli. We need to talk. Now. Eli's lab was cold and sterile, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic. The doctor stood beside a microscope, his expression unreadable. Well, Gregory demanded. Eli turned the computer screen toward him. A series of graphs and chemical readouts filled the display. It works, Eli said quietly. Not just as a chelating agent. It binds to heavy metals, yes, but it also stimulates neural regeneration. I've never seen anything like it. Gregory's breath caught. You're saying it could reverse your paralysis? Maybe, but that's not the problem. Eli tapped a key, pulling up another image. This formula isn't just experimental. It's illegal. The compounds in here were banned after BioNexus trials because they're unstable. One wrong dosage, and it could shut down your kidneys. Or your heart. Gregory stared at the screen. So this was Lucy's game. A cure with a price. She's testing you, Eli said. But for what? Gregory already knew the answer. Revenge. He found Lucy that night under the bridge where she'd been staying, a makeshift tent of tarps and cardboard shielding her from the wind. She didn't look surprised to see him. You tested it, she said, stirring a pot of soup over a small camp stove. Gregory's wheelchair bumped over the uneven ground as he moved closer. You knew it was dangerous. Lucy shrugged. Medicine always is. You of all people should know that. Cut the crap, he snapped. You didn't come to me out of the goodness of your heart. You came because you wanted me to suffer. First, by giving me hope. Then, by watching me realize the cure could kill me. Lucy stopped stirring. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned, her eyes blazing. You think this is about you? She hissed. My sister died. My mother died. And your company paid off the inspectors, buried the reports, made sure no one would ever be held responsible. So yeah, I wanted you to know what it felt like. To be powerless. To hurt. Gregory expected fury. Instead, he felt something colder. But you didn't poison me, he said slowly. Lucy's shoulders slumped. No, I didn't. Then why am I sick? She looked away. Because you did it to yourself. The words hung between them, sharp as a knife. Gregory's mind raced. How? Then it hit him. The private gym, the supplements, the protein shakes he'd been drinking for years, all sourced from a subsidiary of Vaughn Biotech, a subsidiary that had used contaminated water. Lucy's voice was quiet now. I found the connection 6 months ago. Your labs were cutting corners, just like the ones in Harlow Springs. You were poisoning yourself and didn't even know it. Gregory felt the world tilt. All this time, he'd blamed the accident, the universe, fate. But it had been him, his greed, his carelessness, his legacy. Lucy reached into her bag and pulled out a second vial, this one filled with a clear liquid. The real antidote, she said. No side effects. Fully tested. Gregory stared at it. Why give it to me now? Lucy's smile was bitter. Because now you understand. She held out the vial. Gregory hesitated. Then he took it. The trial. Gregory sat in the dim glow of his penthouse lab, the clear vial clutched in his hand. He had spent a small fortune converting one of his spare rooms into a fully equipped medical workspace within hours of leaving Lucy under the bridge. The best toxicologists, neurologists, and chemists money could by now stood around him, analyzing the antidote. Dr. Sanderson adjusted his glasses as he studied the latest results. It's clean, he admitted, sounding almost surprised. No banned compounds. No dangerous interactions. If this works as a preliminary test suggests. Gregory didn't need him to finish the sentence. If it worked, he might walk again. Begin human trials immediately, Gregory ordered. Eli hesitated. Gregory, even with perfect results, we should wait for her. I'll be the first subject. The room fell silent. The injection burned like ice spreading through his veins. Gregory lay on the medical table, wires and sensors covering his body, watching the monitors spike and flutter. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then, a twitch, so small he thought he'd imagined it. But the EMG confirmed it. A neural signal had reached his left foot for the first time in 5 years. Across the room, Eli's face went pale. My God! Gregory closed his eyes. Hope, dangerous and bright, flared in his chest. Then the alarms blared. Lucy was halfway across the city when her burner phone rang. She knew before answering. It's failing. Gregory's voice rasped through the speaker. She squeezed her eyes shut. She'd expected this. You're bored. They sabotaged the compound, added an inhibitor to... A wet cough interrupted him. To destabilize it. Lucy was already moving, grabbing her backpack. Where are you? The lab. Eli says I have maybe 12 hours before. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The line went dead. Gregory's penthouse was swarming with security when Lucy arrived, but no one stopped her. They'd been ordered to let her through. The sight of him hit, like a punch to the gut. Gregory lay convulsing on the lab table, his skin waxy, veins standing out dark against his neck. Eli hovered nearby, frantically adjusting 4 drips. Lucy pushed past him, yanking open her bag. They added methylxanthine derivatives, didn't they? Eli nodded, stunned. How did you? Because I know Vaughn Biotech's playbook. She pulled out 3 syringes and a small black case. This will counteract it, but we have to move fast. Gregory's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His pupils were dilated, his breath ragged. Why, help me now? Lucy met his gaze as she prepared the injection. Because unlike you, I keep my promises. The needle slid into his arm. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then Gregory arched off the table with a gasp as the antidote collided with the inhibitor in his bloodstream. The monitor screamed warnings, heart rate spiking, brain activity surging. As the 2 compounds waged war inside him, Eli reached for the crash cart. He's going into... Wait! Lucy grabbed Gregory's face, forcing him to look at her. Focus on your toes. Move them. A sob tore from Gregory's throat. I can't. You can. The neural pathways are open. Fight. Sweat poured down Gregory's face as he strained, every muscle trembling. For a terrible moment, nothing moved. Then, the smallest twitch of his right big toe. Across the room, the EMG screen lit up with a cascade of signals as dormant nerves fired back to life. The seizure stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Gregory collapsed back onto the table, breathing hard. Did you see? Lucy's hand shook as she checked his vitals. Stable. Improving. I saw. Eli stared between them, awestruck. This changes everything. We have to. No. Gregory's voice was weak but firm. No reports. No trials. Not until we deal with the board. Lucy stiffened. What are you planning? Gregory's smile was razor-thin. What I should have done years ago. He reached for his phone. The leftovers, cure. The Vaughn Biotech boardroom had never seen chaos like this. Gregory Vaughn wheeled himself into the emergency meeting at 8:03 a.m., flanked by Lucy and 2 federal agents. The room fell silent as 20 of the most powerful executives in pharmaceuticals stared at the man they'd left for dead just 12 hours earlier. Gentlemen, Gregory said, his voice carrying the quiet fury of a storm about to break. You'll notice I'm not dead. CEO Richard Caldwell recovered first, his politician smile sliding into place. Gregory, we were all terribly concerned about your... Save it. Gregory tossed a stack of files onto the table. These are lab reports proving you adulterated Lucy Martinez's formula. These, he produced a second stack, are sworn statements from Harlow Springs residents. And this, he held up a single flash drive, is every piece of evidence the FDA and DOJ will need to bury you all. The room erupted. Lucy watched from the corner as Gregory systematically dismantled the empire he'd built. She'd seen vengeance before. Her own had kept her warm on countless cold nights. But this was different. This wasn't rage. It was justice. When the last executive had been escorted out in handcuffs, Gregory turned to her. It's done. She nodded toward his legs. Not quite. For the first time since she'd known him, Gregory Vaughn looked uncertain. The treatment, it could take months. Years, even. Lucy reached into her bag and pulled out a small cooler. Inside were 6 vials of clear liquid. Good thing I brought enough to share. 1 year later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Harlow Springs Free Clinic was broadcast nationwide. Former billionaire Gregory Vaughn stood beside Dr. Lucy Martinez as they welcomed the first patients. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Vaughn, is it true you liquidated your entire fortune to fund this? Dr. Martinez, will you be publishing your research? Gregory answered them all with a smile. But when a little girl in a wheelchair rolled up, clutching a tattered Vaughn Biotech teddy bear, it was Lucy who knelt down. Hey there, she said softly. Ready for your first treatment? The girl nodded. Will it hurt? Gregory placed a steadying hand on Lucy's shoulder as she answered. Just a little pinch. Then we'll get you walking again. As the cameras flashed, capturing the moment, no one noticed Gregory slip Lucy a folded note. She waited until they were alone to read it. The real leftovers were the people we threw away. Thank you for helping me see that. Lucy smiled and tucked it in her pocket. There would be time later to tell everyone about the new research she'd begun, the work that could cure a dozen other incurable conditions. But for today, this was enough. This story proves that even the most broken things can be healed. If this inspired you, share it with someone who needs hope today. And remember, sometimes the greatest strength comes from admitting we were wrong. Subscribe for more stories of redemption against all odds.